The Essence of Zhentong by Jetsun Tāranātha. Om Svasti. Here the essence of Mahāyāna, the Madhyamaka of definitive meaning, nītārtha, negation, will be characterized by 1. A general presentation on the classification of philosophical systems, 2. Identifying the classifications of Madhyamaka, 3. Clearing away extremes imputed by others. 1. A general presentation on the classification of philosophical systems. Non-Buddhist systems. While views and philosophies of other, non-Buddhist, extremists lack a path to freedom, our own Buddhist views and philosophies are related through a path to freedom. Even though extremists do not have a path to freedom, some of them possess, while others do not possess, teachings that lead them to exalted states of existence. For instance, materialists and most other nihilists who lack respect for actions and their effects, and who primarily endorse teachings that are hurtful, do not even have a clear path to exalted states. Saṅkhyas, naked Jain ascetics, some followers of supreme beings, and extremists who meditate often do possess paths to exalted states. They are then reborn as gods and humans within the desire realms due to their having relinquished harmful actions and created virtuous actions. They are reborn in the form realms due to having meditatively cultivated the 4 concentrations, and they are reborn in the formless realms due to having meditatively cultivated the 4 formless stabilizations. The reason why extremists do not have a path to freedom is that they do not relinquish the mentality that fixates onto the egotistic self. This is known as fixation onto the self of personhood. In saṃsāra, from time without beginning, what has continuously come about is this persistent mentality that fixates onto the egotistic self. Even so, these philosophical systems assert its existence along with the many distinctive qualities that are themselves this very egotistic self, and they then meditate on its meaning. Since they do not have anything that can counteract this fixation onto the ego, they are not able to relinquish this self-fixedness. Consequently, this self-fixation is the repetitive cause of their every upsetting emotion. However, the more sophisticated extremists meditate on the coarse impermanence of birth, aging, sickness, death, and so forth. They know the suffering of this life and of the desire realm. They affirm that coarse substances such as material forms lack a true reality. They decrease their attachments and know contentment. They develop loving kindness and compassion. They meditate on the equanimity of friends and enemies, and they relinquish the 4 roots. Since they have an excellent view, meditation, and conduct, their path leads to exalted states. Buddhist systems. There are 4 Buddhist philosophical systems: A. Vaibhashika, B. Sautrantika, C. Chittamatra, D. Madhyamaka. The former 2 belong to the Hīnayāna, or vehicle of the Shravakas, and the latter 2 belong to the Mahāyāna. As for how these are defined as being either Hīnayāna or Mahāyāna, they are designated according to those who accept the set of sutras associated with the Hīnayāna as being the consummate discourses of the Buddha, and those who accept the set of sutras explicated within the Mahāyāna as being the consummate discourses. Accordingly, these are the Hīnayāna philosophical systems and the Mahāyāna philosophical systems, and those who uphold them are referred to as proponents of the Hīnayāna or proponents of the Mahāyāna. Nonetheless, individuals designated as being of the Hīnayāna or of the Mahāyāna are not categorically fixed according to either philosophical system. That is to say, those who have generated within their mind streams the motivation and behavior that leads to the Mahāyāna path are of the Mahāyāna. Those who have generated within their mind streams the motivation and behavior that leads to the Hīnayāna path are of the Hīnayāna. If one has not generated either of these within their mind stream, no matter what texts that person reads or what discourses that person may comprehend, even though they may say they are of either one of these philosophical systems, they are not a person of the Mahāyāna, nor are they a person of the Hīnayāna. Moreover, there are those who uphold a Mahāyāna philosophical system while entering onto a Hīnayāna path, and there are those who uphold a Hīnayāna philosophical system while entering onto a Mahāyāna path. There are those who uphold both a Mahāyāna philosophical system while entering onto a Mahāyāna path, as well as those who uphold both a Hīnayāna philosophical system while entering onto a Hīnayāna path. There are also an incredible amount of those who uphold a philosophical system but do not enter onto a spiritual path. However, it is not possible for an individual to enter onto a path without a philosophical system. Vaibhashika. As for the Vaibhashika, they assert that awareness, including both the mind and the operations of mind, the 10 objects, such as material form and so forth, the non-concurrent factors such as production and destruction, the three types of unconditional phenomena such as space and so forth, and the materials of both past and future are each particularly established as being substantial and really existent. They assert that coarse materials, as well as continuous materials, are not real. They say that ordinary awareness arises from really established sensible objects and sense faculties, and that the sense faculty of an eye actually perceives images. Among them, the best philosophers, such as the Kashmiri adherents of the Vaibhashika, assert that all that is conditional is impermanent and is momentarily disintegrating, and that the individual self does not substantially exist except for being a mere mental imputation. The worst philosophers, such as the Sammitiyas, say that even though what is conditional is impermanent because it ultimately disintegrates, it does not momentarily disintegrate. Consequently, they assert all sorts of material things to be continuous. Though they are not the same as the extremists who designate the egotistic self to be permanent, unitary, and autonomous, they do generally assert that the mere egotistic self is established as real and substantial. Even though they do not actually have a path to freedom because of their perverse view of the self, they have taken refuge in the three jewels and are motivated by the wish to be free. So, through their practices of listening, contemplating, meditating, and ethical behavior, they will eventually have the fortune of attaining liberation. The Vaibhashika assert that the 7 sections of the Abhidharma are discourses of the Buddha, and that much of what is said in the sets of sutras is intended to be of provisional meaning, nītārtha, drangton. Therefore, they assert that it is imperative to rely upon the views and practices according to the commentarial tradition as it is understood within the Mahāvibhāsya treatise. Sautrantika. In considering these topics explained above, the Sautrantikas say that unconditional phenomena and factors are imputed, and that because they are merely mentally imputed, they do not really exist. Furthermore, any coarse continuum, such as material forms and so forth, as well as any continuum within awareness, is not established as real. Phenomena of the past and future are also considered to be mere imputations. Only the molecules of the present moment and instants of awareness are considered to exist as real, without differing facets. They assert that an eye, i.e. the sense faculty of an eye, cannot directly perceive images, and even the perceptual awareness of an eye cannot actually perceive images. That is, what is perceived by the perceptual awareness of an eye is the manifest appearance of an image within visual perceptual awareness itself. This is perceptual awareness representing a feature of an image. Nonetheless, in order for that feature to arise, there must be an exterior image that is transferring that particular feature. As for the 7 sections of the Abhidharma, they do not consider these discourses of the Buddha, and since there are mistakes in commentaries such as the Mahāvibhāsya, they think that philosophies must be in accordance with their sets of sutras. Hinayana and Mahāyāna. Moreover, according to adherents from both of these philosophical systems, these sets of teachings were specifically taught to the Shravaka disciples alone. And all of those sutras, known to the Mahāyāna as the Prajñaparamita, Ratnakuta, and Avatamsaka, are not discourses of the victorious one. They say that what is Hinayana and what is Mahāyāna is specific to the actions of individuals, and that there are no different discourses. All that they assert as being really existent and their refutations of the Mahāyāna are the blemishes of their mistaken philosophical systems. Everything else, as far as the selflessness of personhood, momentary disintegration, and so forth, are not mistaken. Chittamatra. According to the Chittamatra, exterior reference such as forms and so forth are like the images within a dream. They are awareness itself appearing as this and that. Likewise, appearances are not external. For instance, let's use the example of an image. What is known as the visual faculty is the mind appearing as a feature of the eye. So the particular qualities of an eye do not exist. Accordingly, what is known to be an image is the mind appearing as a feature of an image. So the particular qualities of an image do not exist. From these examples, it seems as though appearances merely arise as visual perceptual awareness. However, it would be a delusion to think that all 3 of these appear differently since they are the same essential substance of awareness. Consequently, the visual awareness that perceives an image perceives itself through itself. This is the cause for the feature of that image to arise, and there is nothing at all that is thought to exist externally as an image that transfers features different from that awareness. Nonetheless, they assert that from an unanalyzed and unexamined point of view, an eye perceives an image. However, when analyzed, an image is not real, and what is established as real is the awareness that perceives a specific image. Consequently, ordinary awareness is established as the real nature of every type of awareness, while the objective factor that appears to exist as an external reference and the subjective factor that appears to exist as an interior awareness are both considered distortions. So the subject-object complex does not exist for them, and they assert that an ordinary awareness that is not involved in the subject-object duality is real. Moreover, because they assert that the objective factor and the subjective factor do not exist apart from each other, the subject-object complex is thought to function non-dually. This is asserted to be pristine awareness, the mere intrinsic essence of ordinary awareness. Though within their own tradition, adherents of the Chittamatra system presume that they have refuted the subject-object complex, when evaluated against more advanced philosophical systems, it is obvious that they have not come to refute the subject-object complex. This is because although they claim that the mere substance of the subject and object do not exist separately, they have come to claim that subjectivity does exist from its own perspective. In this way, their mistaken assertions are that cognitions that appear as exterior reference, such as images and so forth, are established to be real. The mere reversal of the identity of ordinary awareness is asserted to be the pristine awareness that is devoid of the dichotomy of subject-object. The nature of subjectivity is not asserted to be ordinary awareness itself, but is rather the mere aspect that appears to be different from the cognition that perceives a particular objective reference. Their other assertions are unmistaken. Madhyamaka. Within Madhyamaka there are two divisions. 1. Common Madhyamaka. 2. Great Madhyamaka. Common Madhyamaka. Here in Tibet, Common Madhyamaka is known as Rangtong, and in both India and Tibet, those who adhered to this system were known as those who assert that there is no intrinsic essence. The masters of this system were Buddhapalita, Bhavaviveka, Vimuktasena, and Shantarakshita, as well as their successors. Although there are internal disputes among the many different divisions of this philosophical system, they are all in agreement that all conditional substances, including the mind, material forms, non-concurrent factors, and all phenomena that are devoid of substantiality and are unconditioned, such as space and so forth, are relative. The mere absence of their intrinsic reality is considered to be ultimate. Both relative and ultimate are inexpressible as either the same or as a different nature, and their distinctions are merely in how they are presented. Since the nature of the ultimate expanse is considered to be nothing whatsoever, they teach that what is free from fabrications is like space. Through the example of illusion, they teach that even though there are relative appearances that occur within time, they are devoid of any reality and appear without interruption. Both relative and ultimate are asserted to be beyond all fabrications, such as existent or non-existent, being and non-being, etc. Moreover, the mistaken assertions of this philosophical system are that the ultimate actuality of phenomena is a mere negation of fabrications, like space. The pristine awareness of a Buddha is relative and is not established to be real. Ultimate reality is not established to be real. In particular, the Prasangika are mistaken in refusing to assert anything in their attempts to quell the debates of others, despite their presentation of a philosophical system, and in their assertion that perverted thinking can be reversed even while an ascertaining awareness has not come about. However, this system is not mistaken in asserting that all phenomena subsumed within the subject-object complex are devoid of reality, and that even the mere absence of any reality cannot be established as real. Both adherents of the Chittamatra and Rangtong Madhyamaka do not clearly assert within their own systems the definitive secret of the enlightened essence, and naturally radiant self-cognizant ultimate pristine awareness. Earlier masters who did not understand these abiding modes did not take Zhentong as a topic for dispute, and even though later philosophers came about and indeed made their refutations, not a single one of them understood the crucial points of the Zhentong philosophical system. So these are solely refutations in which the thinkers on the opposing side of the argument were blind. Great Madhyamaka. In Tibet, the Great Madhyamaka is the Madhyamaka of discerning cognition and is known as Zhentong. This system was elucidated by the treatises of the majestic Maitreya, Asanga, the supreme scholar Vasubandhu, and was greatly clarified by Arya Nagarjuna's Dharmadhātu Stava. In fact, the proclamation of the two most supreme, Asanga and Nagarjuna, is Zhentong. In this system, what is not considered to be real is that which is immaterial, such as the three unconditioned phenomena and imputed unconditioned phenomena as asserted by the Chittamatra system discussed below, material forms, and so forth that are known to be external reference, the 8 types of ordinary awareness, the 51 operations of the mind, and in brief, all phenomena of outwardly samsara. All phenomena subsumed within the circumstantial paths. From among that which is subsumed within the fruition of Buddhahood, the newly arisen facets, and that which is subsumed within the externalizing perceptions of disciples. In other words, the phenomena of sights and sounds, the phenomena that are divided among being phenomena or the actuality of phenomena, and the phenomena that are subsumed within the subject-object complex. At the moment of ascertaining the ultimate, this is all actuality, and that which lacks actuality, as well as all that is conditioned and that is temporarily in its place. Naturally radiant, self-cognizant, pristine awareness that is not divided from the expanse is known as ultimate reality, the unconditional actuality of phenomena. This is the only established reality that can withstand the scrutiny of reasoning. Since those who uphold Rangtong assert that this expanse is like space and is found to be insubstantial when critically analyzed, they don't consider this ultimate reality. However, this Shentong philosophical system is without flaws and is the system that is endowed with every enlightened quality. Everyone who adheres to the Mahāyāna accepts all the Mahāyāna sutras as the Buddha's discourses. Even so, the Chittamatra system upholds these 4 as definitive: Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, Lankavatara Sutra, Gandavyuha Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra. Other sutras are then considered to be provisional in their meaning. The founders of this philosophical system were the early 500 masters. While the common Madhyamaka system upholds that all of the sutras from the final turning are provisional in their meaning, they claim that the Prajñaparamita sutras from the middle turning are of consummate definitive meaning. Those determined as the authors of this system are just those mentioned earlier, Buddhapalita and so forth. According to their own understanding, they assert that the 8 adherents of the essenceless, including Rahula Bhadra, as well as the master Nagarjuna, were upholders of this philosophical system alone. The Great Madhyamaka system relies upon the entirety of sutras from all 3 turnings. More specifically, it relies on several sutras of the initial turning, including Kacha Yanagota Sutta, Maha Sunyata Sutta, several sutras from the occasion of the middle turning, including the chapter requested by Maitreya in the 25,000 stanza Prajñaparamita Sutra, the 500 stanza Prajñaparamita Sutra, as well as several sutras from the final turning, such as the 4 sutras and so forth that taught the ordinary course system of how the ultimate actuality of phenomena is established as real. Then it also relies upon several sutras that taught the consummate, definitive meaning, including Tathagatagarbha Sutra, Mahabariharika Parivarta Sutra, Angulimaliya Sutra, Sri Maladevi Simhanada Sutra, Mahaparinirvana Sutra, Ratnamega Sutra, Prashanta Vinishchaya Samadhi Sutra. These compose a subtle and extraordinary system, a secret narrative on how the very nature of the perfect expanse, the essence of the Tathagatas, and the absolute dimension of phenomena are constant, stable, and everlasting, as well as on how the totality of the ultimate enlightened qualities of Buddhahood reside inherently from original time. The author who then elucidated the meaning of these sutras was the majestic Regent Maitreya. In his Abhisamaya Lankara, he concisely describes this through technical vocabulary. In his Mahāyāna Sutra Lankara, Madhyanta Vibhanga, and Dharmadhātu Vibhanga, he then explains this more extensively and lucidly. And in his Uttara Tantra, he resolves the subtleties of this extraordinary system on the meaning of the sutras on the essence. The authors of the commentaries on the intent of these texts were Asanga and his brother Vasubandhu. Asanga's commentary on the Uttara Tantra expands and clarifies this extraordinary system, and Vasubandhu's commentaries on the Prajñaparamita Sutra in 25,000 stanzas called Conquest Over Harm and the Dharmadhātu Vibhanga are also extremely expansive and clear. In general, all of the treatises by these 2 brothers clarify the Shentong Madhyamaka. As for the general philosophical system of Shentong, this was elaborately explained in the works of Dignaga and Stiramati, as well as by many of their excellent students and successors. As for the extraordinary philosophical system of Zhentong, since this is difficult for most people to comprehend, it was diffused through the manner of whispered ear-to-ear transmission to the most outstanding disciples. Later there were many in India who confused this Shentong Madhyamaka with Chittamatra. Relying upon this, most Tibetans perpetuated this same confusion. In Tibet, although there were many scholars who translated these texts, among those who authentically upheld this philosophical system were Lotsawa Tzu Gawe Dorje, Tsen Kawo Che, and those of the meditative tradition of the 5 treasures of Maitreya. In particular, the one who made the profound Shentong pervade throughout this land like a lion's roar was the great omniscient Dölpopa Shérab Gyeltsen. 2. Identifying the classifications of Madhyamaka. A. The ordinary meaning of Madhyamaka. From Maitreya's Madhyanta Vibhanga it reads, "Erroneous conceptualizing exists. In that state, duality does not exist. In this state, emptiness exists. In that state, this also exists. What is not empty is not non-empty. In this way, everything is explained. Because there is existence, there is non-existence. Because there is existence. This is the way of Madhyamaka." In terms of ascertaining relative reality, any awareness of the various appearances that emerge is merely erroneous thinking, and is relatively existent. Since the objective factor and the subjective factor appear in this way, they are mere mental projections and do not even exist relatively. In this way, relative reality is free from the 2 extremes. A. Conceptualizing is free from the extremes of non-existence and nihilism by being accepted as merely relatively existing. And B. It is free from the extremes of existence and eternalism by being beyond all superimposed dependent phenomena, such as the objective factor and the subjective factor. The pristine awareness that is emptiness and free from fabrications exists within that state of the erroneous conceptualizing of ordinary awareness as the real mode of actual phenomena. In that state of the actuality of phenomena, during moments that are defiled, ordinary awareness is known to exist as naturally unreal. This includes observable phenomena, adventitious defilements that can be removed, and defilements that are to be discarded. Moreover, ultimate reality is known to be free from the 2 extremes. That is to say, since all phenomena subsumed within the subject-object complex, such as conceptualizing and so forth, do not exist as real, emptiness is real beyond the extremes of existence, non-existence, eternalism, and nihilism. This being so, the relative subject-object complex, except for merely manifesting distorted perceptions, is empty of an intrinsic nature because its intrinsic nature is not causally established. Consequently, anything that can be established as the nature of something else, within the division of self and other, cannot possibly be among the references of awareness. Since the relative is in every aspect empty, it is never non-empty. However, the actual phenomenon of pristine awareness is established from original time due to its intrinsic nature. Yet since it is forever unchanging, it is not empty due to its intrinsic nature, and therefore constantly exists. Some may wonder, don't the sutras explain that even the expanse of phenomena is empty? In general, although there is what is empty and there is emptiness, these are not necessarily empty of an intrinsic nature. Pristine awareness is known to be emptiness because it is empty of everything within the subject-object complex, or of fabrications that are imbued with the qualities that consist of anything other than itself. The 3 natures. With that under consideration, the 3 natures are A. the imaginary nature, B. the relational nature, and C. the perfected nature. A. The imaginary nature is everything apprehended through mental reifications, including all that is insubstantial, such as space and so forth, the apparent aspects of sensible objects, such as the images that arise within neurotic thought, and so forth, the relationship of name and meaning, when names are attached to meanings and meanings are distorted as names, that which is internal and external, center and periphery, big and small, good and bad, superior, temporal, etc. B. The relational nature is merely ordinary awareness actually perceiving the subject-object complex. This occurs when perceptions become dependent upon the habitual propensities of ignorance. C. The perfected nature is naturally radiant, self-cognizant, and is free from all fabrications. Synonyms for it include the actual nature of phenomena, the expanse of phenomena, the actuality of existence, ultimate reality, etc. This being so, both the imaginary and relational natures are equally devoid of being real, equally distorted perceptions, and equally relative and artificial. What necessarily differentiates these distinct natures is that while the imaginary nature does not even exist relatively, the relational nature does relatively exist. Because the perfected nature does not relatively exist, but ultimately exists, it exists as real. Similarly, the imaginary nature imputatively exists. The relational nature substantially exists, and even though the perfected nature does not exist in the same way as either of those two, it exists free from fabrications. The imaginary nature is the emptiness of non-existence. The relational nature is the emptiness of existence, and the perfected nature is ultimate emptiness. From the majestic Maitreya's Mahāyāna Sutra Lankara, it reads, "When one knows the emptiness of non-existence, and likewise the emptiness that is due to existence, as well as the emptiness that is natural, then it is said that one knows emptiness." The imaginary nature is devoid of the very essence of characteristics, the relational nature is devoid of the very essence of what is born, and the perfected nature is ultimately devoid of any essence. From Vasubandhu's Trimshika, it reads, "Of the three natures, by relying upon the three that are devoid of any essence, it is taught that all phenomena are devoid of any intrinsic nature." In this system, it follows that everything knowable is emptiness because it is devoid of an essence. With this in mind, that there is an emptiness of the nature of phenomena and that there is a non-emptiness of the nature of phenomena is accepted within the Shentong system, while there are internal contradictions to that system known as Rangtong. Therefore, the pure Rangtong that was taught by the Buddha is that which abides as intrinsically empty within relativity, as well as within these three that are devoid of any essence. So those who assert Rangtong unerringly and those who definitively assert that there is no essence are both proponents of Shentong. That Bhava Viveka, Buddhapalita, and others are known as asserting Rangtong and the lack of any essence is a case of giving priority to what has become widespread among ordinary worldly people. Some may wonder, if the perfected nature is established to be real, does it arise, dwell, and subside? Does it come and go, change and reverse, have time and spatial reference? Is it one or many? No. It necessarily follows that whatever possesses those is not real. The perfected nature is without arising, without dwelling, and without subsiding. It does not come or go. It is not one or many. It is without cause or result. By way of its own nature, it is beyond definition, what is to be defined, and their respective basis. It is free from all time and spatial reference. By way of its own nature, it is not related to the actual phenomena of the relative. Because it does not have separate parts that can be broken off, it remains partless. Because this is the actuality of all phenomena, this is omnipresent and all-pervasive. B. The extraordinary meaning of Madhyamaka. From Maitreya's Mahāyāna Sutra Lankara, it reads, "Because the nature within everything is utterly pure without distinctions, it is the Tathagata itself. This is the essence dwelling in all beings." This means that nature and Tathagata are of the same identity, and their meaning is known as the essence of the Tathagatas. The terms the essence of the Tathagatas, the essence of the Sugatas, and the essence of the Buddhas all have the same meaning. Even though this resides equally within Buddhas, sentient beings, and all phenomena, it resides in the manner of an embryonic essence within sentient beings, while it resides in a fully manifest manner within Buddhas. Likewise, this essence dwells within the core of the mind streams of sentient beings as the ultimate Buddha, and all sentient beings are said to be endowed with this essence of the Tathagatas. This essence of the Sugatas also lies within sentient beings, and is alternatively referred to as the natural abiding spiritual affinity and the factor within sentient beings. Some may wonder, since this nature resides in the manner of an essence within Buddhas, and since it resides in the manner of an embryonic essence within sentient beings, is this nature twofold? No, it is not. Buddha is this nature itself. Even when Buddha is explained as having the meaning of a person, in its own right, it is unhidden and manifest. So when the meaning of essence is understood as indwelling and hidden, the etymology of essence, garba, nyingpo, as hidden within, is incomplete. Although that very same nature of Buddhas dwells within sentient beings, it is not seen from the perspective of sentient beings themselves, and so this essence has the meaning of being hidden to sentient beings. However, when the meaning of essence is explained as being invariable, it is understood that even a Buddha is endowed with the essence of a Buddha. Therefore, this essence of the Tathagatas is free from being substantial or insubstantial. This is the actual unconditioned, the unconditioned ultimate. As for the extraordinary and secret abiding reality, there are no disagreements about the fact that the expanse of phenomena that is Buddhahood exists as the nature of every enlightened quality of a Buddha, and is consequently not divisible from the expanse of phenomena that is sentient beings. So what is so illogical about this essence of the Tathagatas that lies within the continua of sentient beings, also being the nature that abides within every enlightened quality of a Buddha? From Maitreya's Uttaratantra it reads, "That which is radiant, uncreated, indivisible, and surpasses the sands in the river Ganges, is itself endowed with every phenomena of Buddhahood." As it is explained, this expanse of phenomena is endowed with every enlightened quality that comprises the nature of the unconditioned. This is every enlightened quality of ultimate Buddhahood. Therefore, the pristine awareness of the expansive phenomena solely pervades ultimate reality. Even though from primordial time the other four types of pristine awareness primarily abide as the ultimate, each has slight relative portions that are realized anew through the process of meditation along the path. The 10 powers, 4 kinds of fearlessness, and so forth are similar as well. The qualities of an exalted body, such as the major and minor marks of beauty, and the qualities of exalted speech, such as the 60 variations of melody, each equally share aspects that are relative and ultimate. Similarly, the essential dimension is entirely ultimate, the exalted dimension of phenomena is predominantly ultimate, and both the resplendent dimension and the emanatory dimension share equal proportions if they are not divided into the actual and the imputed. Nevertheless, enlightened activities appear within the perspectives of others as being relative, while the energy and capacity of pristine awareness remains ultimate. So from primordial time, all that is ultimately consumed within the exalted dimensions, types of pristine awareness, qualities, and enlightened activities abides within the essence of the Tathagatas. When someone becomes a Buddha, these are not then newly acquired, but are merely separated from the defilements that have eclipsed them. However, all that is relative is realized anew. This is why Buddhas of the past and Buddhas of the future are ultimately of the same identity. Even those who are relative are undifferentiated in their nature, from the time they realize Buddhahood, and from that time onwards. Nonetheless, until that time of realization, they are different, even though they are expressed as being neither the same nor different. Therefore, the newly realized causes and effects that are generated through meditation along the path are effects that are produced, but are not real. However, Buddhahood abides from primordial time, and it is this Buddhahood that is merely freed from the coverings that obscure it through meditation along the path. This process is called the liberative effect, while the path is referred to as the cause of liberation. These are merely imputed causes and effects, not actual. Moreover, this liberative effect is not the analytical cessation that is described in the Abhidharma as liberation that is mental exhaustion. This is a real cessation and an ultimate liberative effect, such as is explained in the King Dharanishvara Sutra, where it reads, "Because this is exhaustion from primordial time, it is called exhaustion." Some may wonder, since obscurations are relinquished through the power of the path, wouldn't this be equivalent to mental exhaustion? Obscurations are not relinquished from the perspective of the expansive phenomena, but are relinquished from the perspective of individuals. So for those individuals who are Buddhas, their realization is merely designated as realization through the liberation of mental exhaustion. However, since the expanse of phenomena is unblemished by defilements from primordial time, there is no new exhaustion through the mind. Because of this, the essence of the Tathagatas and the non-dual pristine awareness that pervades the nature of phenomena are equally adorned with all of the ultimate enlightened qualities of Buddhahood. Just this great and invariable perfected nature is endowed with every aspect of pristine awareness while remaining free from all fabrications. This is the only unmistaken abiding reality. Because it is established as real, it is the object of experience for the undistorted pristine awareness of the exalted ones. Because it is invariable, it is constant, stable, and everlasting. Moreover, this enlightened essence that resides as the qualities of all of the major and minor marks is explained by numerous synonyms throughout all of the Tantra sections of Secret Mantra. In brief, whatever phenomena of sights and sounds may occur, regardless of whether they are called relative or the subject-object complex or distorted phenomena, this perfected nature remains unblemished. Furthermore, the unblemished does not exist as distinct and separate things. Even though these things exist within the actual abiding mode of the relative, it is not possible to blemish the expanse of phenomena. Because the relative consists merely of distorted perceptions, what remains in abiding reality is not established, like the horns of a rabbit. So it is not possible to blemish the unblemished. Therefore, this perfected nature, the enlightened essence, is never empty of its own nature. Since from original time, this is empty of the extrinsic and relative, this ultimate reality of the perfected nature is known as Shentong, extrinsic emptiness, not Rangtong, intrinsic emptiness. Accordingly, all that is relative is empty of its extrinsic nature, as well as empty of its intrinsic nature. Since the ultimate is only empty of its extrinsic nature, this system is asserted to be Zhentong Madhyamaka. In this way, in order to reverse your fixations on the various phenomena of saṃsāra, meditate on impermanence and the renunciation of suffering. Also renounce your mental involvement in concern for yourself, and rely upon the continuum of your mind of awakening, bodhicitta. In order to relinquish your coarse fixations on the relative, meditate on ascertaining the unreality of the relative. To relinquish your subtle fixations on the discursive thinking of the relative, meditatively subsume yourself non-conceptually within the expanse. Through this process, you will then gradually come to encounter the non-conceptual enlightened essence directly. Subsequently, the entire progress of meditation along the path is for the sake of encountering the perfected nature. 3. Clearing away extremes imputed by others. Though this can be known from my ornament of Zhentong Madhyamaka and will be explained in greater depth elsewhere, I will give the concise essence here. In the Lankavatara Sutra, others asked, aren't the major and minor marks of the enlightened essence the same features as those of the soul of the extremists? In response, it was explained by the Buddha that these are not the same features because they are of emptiness. So it is said that this enlightened essence does not exist as real, and if these major and minor marks were to exist, then they would be from the system of the extremists. It is also said that, like space, what is not established whatsoever is known as the enlightened essence. However, the mere recognition of different kinds of emptiness as meaning the unreal and the non-existence of anything whatsoever without definition is the mental fault of fixating onto one's own erroneous philosophical system. From the Lankavatara Sutra, it reads, the reason why these are not the same features as the extremists is because of the manifestation of emptiness, not because these major and minor marks are not manifest. So the claim that the enlightened essence of the completely radiant major and minor marks is explained to be interpretive in meaning is reduced to a mere deception within the world of lies. The claim that the enlightened essence is permanent, as asserted within the system of the extremists, is also reduced to a refutation within the Essence Sutras. Moreover, it is not acceptable to assert that the meaning of permanence is the permanence of a continuum. This is because saṃsāra, the entire subject-object complex, is merely the permanence of a continuum. So if the mere permanence of a continuum was sufficiently permanent, then all conditioned phenomena would have to be permanent. Some may wonder, since it is initially defiled and then later becomes undefiled, must it not be impermanent? From the perspective of the expansive phenomena, it was never initially defiled, nor did it later become undefiled. However, the extent to which it becomes defiled or undefiled depends upon one's own individual mind stream. Accordingly, the context of the actuality of phenomena does not change due to the changing contexts of sentient beings. Some may wonder, isn't it inadmissible that the pristine awareness of Buddhas exist within the mind streams of sentient beings? This contradicts the direct statements. This is because the pristine awareness of Buddhas resides within the multitude of sentient beings. Some may wonder, isn't it inadmissible that the enlightened qualities of Buddhas exist within the mind streams of sentient beings? For example, if the power to know what is definite and what indefinite existed within the mind streams of sentient beings, then it would necessarily follow that all sentient beings would understand what is definite and what is indefinite. Even though this is often claimed, it is not correct. This is because we do not assert that everything within the mind streams of sentient beings is Buddha. Also, if it necessarily follows that these enlightened qualities and Buddha must dwell within the mind streams of sentient beings, then when a Buddha sits on a throne, it must follow that even that throne would understand everything there is to know. In this way, how could the 8 modes of ordinary awareness within the mind streams of sentient beings be Buddha? Even the Buddha that dwells there does not dwell according to the modes of relative support and what is supported, but dwells according to the mode of the ultimate actuality of phenomena. Conclusion. At this point, it is important that we have a brief discussion on vocabulary. As for the 3 progressive Dharma wheels, 1. The initial Dharma wheel was concerned with the 4 Noble Truths. 2. The middle Dharma wheel was concerned with the absence of characteristics. 3. And the final Dharma wheel was concerned with elegantly making distinctions. The initial turning consisted of the Hinayana Sutras, the collection of scriptures that were explained for the Shravakas. Although the middle turning consisted of the primary sutras of the Mahāyāna, its intended meaning is hidden. As for the final turning, this is the exposition on the middle turning, and it extremely clearly teaches the definitive meaning. The 3 natures are A. The imaginary nature, B. The relational nature, and C. The perfected nature. The imaginary nature is twofold: the objective imaginary nature and the subjective imaginary nature. The relational nature is twofold: the impure relational nature and the pure relational nature. The perfected nature is twofold: the invariable perfected nature and the incontrovertible perfected nature. Among these, the actual imaginary nature is the objective, while the actual perfected nature is the invariable, and not the incontrovertible that is the same essence as the invariable. The pure relational nature is subsumed within the incontrovertible, and the subjective imaginary nature is of the same essence as the relational nature. When analyzed through reasoning, the actual relational nature is subsumed within the imaginary nature, while the abiding mode of the actuality of phenomena for both is the perfected nature. All phenomena are subsumed within both the imaginary nature and the perfected nature. These divisions of the 3 natures within all phenomena and the 2 perspectives of relative ordinary awareness and ultimate pristine awareness are in relation to samsara and nirvana. Since forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and so forth are among the perspective of relative ordinary awareness, they are unreal. Since the forms, sounds, and so forth of the actuality of phenomena are among the perspective of pristine awareness, they are established as real. While there are variable perspectives of the relative, all phenomena of the ultimate are devoid of defect or contradiction. Colophon. This was written at the hermitage of Cholung Changse by the one called Tāranātha, upon request, for a few seekers. Tashi.